This is another Corporate Transparency Act update. Hot off the presses, FinCEN, so that's the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, that's the criminal investigative arm of the U.S. Treasury Department, pushed out an alert. And the alert they basically said was all entities created in the United States, including those previously known as domestic reporting companies and their beneficial owners, are now, and this is key, they are now exempt from the requirement to report beneficial ownership information, also known as BOI, to FinCEN. Existing foreign companies that must report their beneficial ownership information have at least an additional 30 days from the date of publication of the interim final rule. So, what does this mean? So, remember, the Corporate Transparency Act was an act that was passed by Congress. It was designed to essentially compel further disclosure and transparency of ownership of entities that were formed not just in this country, but also outside of this country in its effort to essentially crack down on criminal activities, money laundering, and other things. Well, groups filed a series of lawsuits, which, as you know, if you've been following updates, resulted in an injunction, essentially staying enforcement of the Corporate Transparency Act. Well, potentially the constitutionality of whether the privacy rights that certain states have outweigh essentially the obligation to file beneficial ownership information. And with the new administration coming into Washington with the recent election, that administration has taken a different tact in connection with the enforcement of the Corporate Transparency Act. So you saw essentially the Treasury Department push out a press release basically saying that they were not going to take any action or penalize domestic formed entities in the United States if they chose not to upload or file their beneficial ownership information in a timely manner. And they basically said that they were going to look at narrowing the scope of the Corporate Transparency Act to essentially make privacy groups somewhat happy, right? And then also focus in on foreign entities that are essentially doing business inside of the United States. So this is hot off the presses. So once again, if you were concerned about whether you should have filed by March 21st, which was the deadline set by a court on another litigation matter involving the Corporate Transparency Act, the FinCEN, the investigative penalty arm of the Treasury Department, has basically said they're not going to take any action against you for doing so. So hopefully this was helpful for you. We'll push out additional updates as they come in. And for those of you that love commercial real estate, as you know that we do, Godspeed, happy hunting.